frustration that we saw on Sunday?
I actually feel that his frustration in that one situation was legitimate. The guy shouldn't have come out of the end zone. The question is Ty Montgomery a bad guy? Is Ty Montgomery a guy that historically defies what the coaches ask him to do? And the things that I've read, the things that I've heard is that that's not the case. So the fact that he took it out of the end zone and there was some confusion there, to me is more problematic. How was that not as clearly explained as possible, that there's time out before it happens, that you have a chance to huddle up and say, okay, this is what we're doing. So it's hard for me to look at Ty Montgomery and say, okay, this is a guy who clearly went rogue and did his own thing. There's some disconnect there, and if I was Aaron Rodgers, I'd be frustrated about that fact, that in that situation, because I do think Aaron Rodgers plays really good situational football. In that situation, there was some kind of miscommunication which led to this.
And some of that, in my eyes, especially given the history, has to fall on the coaching staff. And here's why I say that. One of the things we compliment Bill Belichick on all the time is his players never do things like this. They always understand time score situation. They're never running out of bounds when you're trying to run out the clock. They understand all those things. So the flip side of that is if you have a team that this has happened multiple times to, then all of a sudden, is it not being coached up? And what do I mean when I say multiple times? How about the closest Aaron Rodgers has come to making a second Super Bowl? Do you remember what happened in that Seahawks-Packers game? Onside kick, Seahawks, and Brandon Bostic went rogue. Brandon Bostic's job was to block on this play. The ball's going right to Jordy Nelson. Bostic, I got it. No, I don't. And said after the game, I know what my job was. He felt terribly. McCarthy was mad, but he didn't follow his assignment. Now, maybe that's unfair to say that's on the coaching staff, at least in part. But what I know is that there are very clear assignments. I know that the best coach team in football, the New England Patriots, their players seem to always follow those assignments. The Packers make the Super Bowl. We get the Super Bowl we've always wanted, Rodgers, Brady, if not for that play right there. And so I understand I'm going back in the archives because that's a famous play. I'm not pulling something from earlier this year in a similar situation. But we have instances of Rodgers being denied an opportunity. I understand his frustration. And of guys who have a very clear job just not doing their job on those types of plays.
Look, I wish I could say that everything New England was done exactly the way we wanted it to be done all the time. But there are times where players make mistakes. There are times where players feel like they can make plays. But it's the exception. It's not the rule there. And things like this are frustrating. And it's frustrating across the board when you have one guy who decides, I'm going to do this. And very rarely does it work out in a positive way for the team.
Yeah, I've been on teams that guys made mistakes in critical situations. And regardless of how well you're coached, when you're in that moment, it's very, very difficult as a professional athlete to decide in milliseconds what's the right thing to do. What is my training? And most of the time, the training is to be aggressive. As far as Bostic going after that ball, he was clearly chastised by the coach on the sideline. I just don't like to make excuses for a game that's very, very difficult to play. And when you're in Montgomery's spot, you want to be able to make a play. He could have misjudged the ball. That could be the excuse for him drifting back into the end zone. But what he is accused of and the character of the player, they don't match up. So a lot of times, this could be his first critical mistake as a professional. These are highly contested games. This is not the regular job. This is not where your boss tells you, hey, I need you to have a new assignment. No, NFL jobs, they don't work like that. And there's a lot of pressure, and guys make bad decisions under the gun. And we can't always blame coaches because things happen at 1,000 miles per hour. And sometimes you have to live with those judgments. That's why you coach guys up for situations so you can prepare their minds visually, physically for what's getting ready to happen. So when it happens, you don't react the wrong way. That's why you rehearse catching the football time after time after time again. And the reason why when I drop one, why I would get disappointed because I had trained myself for that moment. And a lot of times players, man, they make mistakes at the wrong time. And it's the reason in team sports, you have to depend on so many guys. And that's why you can't, if a guy doesn't win a championship or something, you can't call a guy Aaron Rodgers. That don't make him not a champion because he's on a team with guys who have made mistakes in critical situations.
I think it's easy to turn this into a disciplinary conversation and say, well, he made a mistake, he wasn't listening, he should be disciplined for it. But I think what you said is on the table. The game's going 100 miles an hour. He made a split decision, perhaps the wrong one, but there weren't a couple plays before that where he also
Well, listen, I think one of the reasons people may be unfairly calling his character into question is, according to Mike Silver's reporting, a few series prior, he had, I don't know, I think it was described as something of a tantrum on the sideline because he was taken out of the game. When he was put back in the game, he missed an assignment on a block on a key third down.
I haven't seen a really good player. The coach say, hey, you're out of the game.
Sure.
You say, hey, coach, oh, thank you.
No problem.
You did me a dang on favor. Oh, thank you very much.
No, I get that.
That doesn't, you don't make it in the NFL with that. So, yes, you're going to have a natural reaction.
I'm just wanting the audience to understand where the story's coming from. They didn't read Mike Silver's story. But I thought UC made a really good point yesterday that's only amplified by the rule change this year. And the point was, you're told put your heels on the goal line. And if you have to step back, then you take a knee.
That's how I train all my kids.
But they made a rule change this year, which is if the ball lands in the end zone, it's not a live ball, it's dead. You don't even have to catch it this year. In the past, that's a live ball. We'd seen the once every 5 years, ball land in the end zone, no one touches it, it rolls around, you pick it up for a touchdown. That's not on the table this year. So it's a touchback if it just lands in the end zone. So you can have your heels on the goal line, and you don't even have to catch it if it's going over your head. You can just let it go.
What becomes the problem is when you try to force your will on a game. When you try to say, I'm getting ready to do something in this game, and the game does not call for you to do something. When I'm in a team sport, it calls for me in that situation to get the ball to Aaron Rodgers at the 25, north of the 2-minute warning, which the coach said with one timeout. Now, go ahead, Coach.
One of the things that happens is when you add pressure to a situation, a player or human being's focus narrows, and they can only take so many cues at that point. So if you've got a guy that's already emotional, who's going through some struggles, and he's going into that situation, you got to make sure that you very clearly explain to him, this is what we want you to do. And you know, you'd like to imagine that was what is done. But in those moments, those guys sometimes make mistakes like they do. Now, what I don't like as a coach is if he had taken that out and gotten it to the 50, would they be giving it attaboys?
Or would they be saying it was still the wrong play?
Because to me, Customato, the famous trainer, said you got to train guys so much that they can't screw it up even if they want to. And so if you're giving someone an attaboy when they take a chance that's outside of the scheme and make a play, then it's hard to go back and criticize as a coach if they do something like he did. And I don't know what that dynamic is.
One quick comparison to New England, Cordell Patterson. He brought out a kick out of the end zone in Chicago, fumbled it, ended up being a critical turnover. He did redeem himself and make a big play later on. But the philosophy for them this year, they're going to be more aggressive. It's a philosophy. But New England players, they make mistakes.
Oh, for sure.
So it does happen. It's just the philosophy in that situation should have been to take a knee. New England has decided this year with Cordell as the returner, we're going to be more aggressive because of the newer rules.
All right, Coach, we'll see you a little bit later on. Coming up, will the Cavaliers ever recover from losing LeBron? That's next on First Things First.
How'd the Cavs make the show?